News begins in America, where an iconic monument has been unveiled in the city of Boston to commemorate the 2023 Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The day is set aside to remember the life and times of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who stood for justice in America, particularly for the Black community. News Central's Bernard Akede has more in this report.
I have a dream.
Martin Luther King Jr. Day, officially the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and sometimes referred to as MLK Day, is a federal holiday in the United States of America, marking the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is observed on the third Monday of January each year.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
Born in 1929, Dr. King's actual birthday is January 15th, which in 1929 fell on a Tuesday. The holiday is similar to the holidays set under the Uniform Monday Holidays Act. The earliest Monday for this holiday is January 15th, and the latest is January 21st. An American Baptist minister and activist, and one of the most prominent leaders in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968, Dr. King was the chief spokesperson for the non-violent activism in the civil rights movement, which protested racial discrimination in federal and state law.
I accept the Nobel Prize for Peace.
On October 14, 1964, Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through non-violent resistance. In 1965, he helped organize 2 of the 3 Selma to Montgomery marches. In his final years, he expanded his focus to include opposition towards poverty, capitalism, and the Vietnam War.
Thank you.
In 1968, King was planning a national occupation of Washington, D.C. to be called the Poor People's Campaign when he was assassinated on April the 4th in Memphis, Tennessee. The campaign for a federal holiday in King's honor began soon after his assassination in 1968.
The president signed the bill, which he had so strongly opposed, making...
President Ronald Reagan signed the holiday into law in 1983, and it just met.
We, the people, are going to choose love over hate. I believe
U.S. President Joe Biden delivered a sermon at Ebenezer Baptist Church where Dr. King served, making him the first U.S. sitting president to do so. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. will always be remembered globally for the brave stance he took on racism and inequality.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
Bernard Akede, reporting for News Central.
And joining us on the news is Ignatius Arnor, a journalist. Hello, Ignatius.
Hi, how are you?
Very fine and good. Now, how significant is the commemoration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day to America, and most especially the Black community and, of course, the world?
So it is a day where Americans reflect on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He stood for equality. He stood for people being seen as one people. He stood for hope. He stood for kindness, and he stood for love. And since his assassination yesterday, he would have been 94 years old were he to be alive. Since his assassinations, what the United States has been trying to do is to deal with racial inequalities and ultimately economic inequality, essentially making sure that Black, white people, Latinos, people, everybody that is resident in this country gets the right to live off their truth and live the American dream. It's so significant that it's a national or a federal holiday, as I would say. So government agencies, banking institutions, and non-essential services have all been closed today, just so that Americans could take this day to reflect on how far the country has come and what the impact of Dr. Martin Luther King on the civil rights movement within the country is concerned. That's why at this particular location, which is the Dr. Martin Luther King Memorial that you can see right there behind me, scores of Americans and even outside of the country continue to pour in to commemorate this day.
So aside the unveiling of the iconic monument in Boston there, now how much progress has the U.S. made in eliminating racial discrimination and, of course, promoting social justice, the basics that Dr. King fought and lost his life for?
So the country continues to grapple with racial inequalities. It could be seen in the murder, the killing of George Floyd in 2020, Breonna Taylor as well, and that led to massive protests across the country, as particularly Black people continue to say that Black lives matter. I will quote the movement as saying, yesterday in Atlanta at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, where the late Dr. Martin Luther King was a pastor before he was assassinated, President Joe Biden asks Americans whether they choose a democracy over chaos or love over hate, also making a case for voting rights in this country. In the 117th Congress, there was a bill that was before them, which is the John Lewis Voting Right Act, which essentially could not go through. He made a case for why Congress needs to pass that bill to ensure that every citizen of this country has a say in determining the direction of the country, and also talked about the fact that healthcare for Americans should be a right and not a privilege, among other critical issues that he spoke about in addressing the racial divide that continues to exist in the United States. And even as people of color, particularly Black people, continue to say that their life matters, they need to be heard, and that their voices are important in critical conversations in the country. As I told you, scores of people continue to come here to honor the legacy of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and also chart a new path ahead in making sure that his legacy continue to live on.
Now, Ignatius, beyond the United States, racism remains a key touchy subject that keeps cropping up in politics, sports, and every other aspect of human endeavor in our world as of today. So basically, it exists and continues to rear its ugly head in different continents and in various ways. Can racism be eliminated globally now, looking at it from the global aspect?
That's a very good question that you ask. It's one of the questions that I also posed to a U.S. citizen at this memorial today. And I will start with a quote that is just right next to the memorial that you can see. Just next to it is a memorial that says, "Out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope." Indeed, Americans are saying that the reality of racism is within the country, but then hope is something that they cannot afford to lose hope in the fight against ensuring that minority people, not only in this country but across the world, have some kind of decency, and that their humanity is respected and upheld, and that ultimately racism is dealt with. So I would answer the question by saying that people are hopeful that that would be an issue of the past, especially looking at where the U.S. has come from, where in the past people of color could not sit on the same bus as white people, and even if they were, they had to stand white people sit down. That segregation is no longer in the country. There are schools where people of color attend, which decades ago wasn't the issue here. So it's a fight that is continuing to be fought, but at the far front of that being hope.